Hello, my name is Roy Dean, and I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Professor Roy Harris. I want to personally thank you for buying this DVD and hope that it aids you on your journey in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. BJJ is an amazing martial art, and I'm glad that it has been able to be so well received here in North America, and that it is something that the Gracies have made available to the public. It's an art that I feel is powerful enough to be soft with, so that you only use just the amount of force that's necessary to subdue or control your opponent. Of course, you can take it to another level where you use it in mixed martial arts competitions, you use it for defensive tactics if you're in law enforcement. There are all kinds of applications, but generally, I think Jiu-Jitsu is for everybody. Jiu-Jitsu is for people to learn how to communicate with their bodies. We can communicate through words, but we also can communicate through motions, and we read body language all the time. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just another form of self-expression. People are able to effectively implement these techniques against people of all sizes. Size and strength really do not matter once you get to a certain level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Of course, they will always be factors, but because of the training method, because of the randori, because of the sparring training method that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu employs, you are able to reinvent effectiveness for yourself. So every generation of martial artists has to discover that truth for themselves. It's not enough to pay lip service to some master who may not be alive today who was effective with his techniques. The thing is, he discovered how to make his techniques effective, and we have to reinvent that every generation and discover the truth. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a very physical martial art. It will transform your body. It will make your mind sharp. It will make your reflexes very quick. It'll make you more agile, supple, coordinated, better cardiovascular conditioning, better diet, better everything. It's a lifestyle once you tap into it. Once you learn the technique in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, once you really understand how to use your weight properly, how to use timing, how to use the strength that you do have very efficiently, then things change for you. The entire experience of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu changes. At first, it's very difficult. By the time you reach blue belt, it's manageable. Purple belt, oh, it's fun. Brown belt, oh, this is getting easy. Black belt, it's great, but you just opened a whole new door, and now there's a lot more learning you realize that you have to do. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is pretty frustrating at first. When you start out, you hear this talk of strength doesn't matter, it's all about technique, etc., etc. But when you actually go to class and spar with somebody that's much larger than you are, strength matters. Strength matters in a big way, and you're thinking that, man, that's all lies. What are they telling me? You just have to give it a little bit more time. You have to stay the course and continue that training. You have to continue to water the plant. If you stop now, you'll never see it bloom. But what you have to do is just go to class. Be consistent. If you can do that, that is the discipline. That is what you need to do. And then the journey will change. The entire experience of BJJ will change. When you start as a white belt, you pay your dues. You tap. And that's the way it is, because those other people got on the escalator before you did. They were in exactly your position. However, they stuck it out, and then they turned a corner. After about 6 months, 9 months, maybe even a year, right around when you get your blue belt, you turn a corner. You're no longer simply defending. Now you're giving a little back. You're giving them a run for their money. It's hard for them to tap you. You might even catch somebody. That is a great feeling. Congratulations, kudos to you. That's real progress. That wasn't an accident. That's progress. Later, it gets even easier. So you might plateau a little bit of blue belt, but once you tap into using your legs like your arms, that's purple. And then your energy expenditure goes way down, Your fuel economy goes way up and the game becomes a lot more fun. Plus, you look at size and strength very differently. If people are big but they don't know how to apply that weight that they have, you are familiar with ways to work around that power. And then, that's a good time. Trust me on that. Later on, the game changes again. It becomes smaller and smaller. Brown belt, black belt, those are ranks of refinement. How well you do the techniques that you're able to implement, how efficiently you're able to get into it, how you can save time, how you can save motions. It's really changing the experience, but to the uneducated eye, it may not seem that different. So the journey will change for you in BJJ. And I think that once you have a solid foundation with positional escapes, with a few basic submissions, and knowing what to do in every position, if you just have a game plan for every position, that will really enhance the experience for you. If you're grasping at straws and you think everything is a threat, then you never really have the chance to direct and channel your energy efficiently. So what you need to do is just focus on positional escapes, getting up off your back, and trying to protect yourself at this early stage. Then once you have a handle on all the techniques in this DVD, the experience will change for you, and I assure you, you'll enjoy your journey much better. Positional escapes. Positional escapes are the foundation of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rests upon positional escapes because that is where you want your opponent to be in an inferior position. Now, if you end up in the inferior position, it is critical that you know the proper steps to escape that inferior position and then get gravity on your side and be able to positionally dominate. If you develop your game unevenly, say you get really good submissions, but you don't have positional escapes, then in the back of your mind you'll have a little bit of fear because you don't want to give up positions and you won't take as many chances because you might fear that you lose a position. And that is not a good place to be. You don't want to be clinging to a position with all your might. You actually want to be loose and relaxed so that you're able to capitalize on the slightest opportunity that your opponent gives you. You know, you're not going to hit 100%. When you go for a submission, sometimes you're going to lose it. Sometimes that window of opportunity, you almost fit through, but not quite. So when you have a good base in positional escapes, you're able to eliminate a lot of that fear and then have a much better attitude and an openness in your game when it comes to taking submissions later on. TJ has me in the mount, and I need to escape. It's very difficult for me to escape because he has gravity on his side. There's a lot of friction holding me in place. Not good. So first thing I need to do is take my forearm, put it against his hips. Now I'm not going to lift him with my arm. I'm going to lift him with my hips. Put my heels to my butt, bridge up, and then out. I move my hip out and see how I use my elbow here to open a little bit of space. And then I insert my knee. My arm goes across, move my hip out again, insert my knee, wrap the leg, wrap the leg. It's important to get a very strong bridge from here. Bridge up, and then as he's falling, I push his weight away. Open a little bit. I don't need to bring my foot all the way through. Just getting the knee in is enough. Come back, arm across, move my hip out, insert my other knee, wrap the leg, and then wrap the leg. So with this technique, a lot depends on how much space our partner gives us.
If I bridge and TJ settles his weight back on me and I can just get my knee in, that's okay. I'll work toward the regular escape. But if TJ gives me a lot of space, if I'm able to really cast him off with some distance here, then maybe I can throw that leg over, go into a heel hook, classic heel hook entry, or maybe work for a foot lock. So even if he doesn't put his weight back on me and I'm able to push him off here, we can create space and move into another technique. The classic elbow knee escape that I just showed is generally used in combination. Here are some other mount escapes that you should ingrain into your body because you'll have to use these in combination as well to escape a very skilled opponent. TJ has me mounted. First thing I need to do is control one side of his body. So I'm going to clasp my hands together, thumb over thumb, pull his arm, break it down, pull it into my chest, unfurl my hands. One goes behind the tricep, the other on top of the forearm, even as high as the wrist. Now, I need to use my elbow to push his knee down so I can effectively trap his ankle. Same side, same arm, same leg. Now I bridge up, turn, and end in good posture. Palms in the biceps of my opponent to prevent him from going for a choke. Break it down, trap it. Use your elbow. Trap his foot, bridge up, and then over. One more mount escape. TJ now, in an effort to gain more control, hooks underneath my neck. I'm gonna trap his arm by combing my hair. Lock in my elbow, other palm goes on his hip. I find his hip bone, I push with the heel of my hand, trap his ankle, then I bridge up, over, and end in good posture. TJ's hooking underneath my neck. I comb my hair, this palm right on the hip, block his ankle, bridge up, and end in good posture. Bridging is one of the fundamental movements of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's very useful in escaping the mount. However, that is not the only way to escape the mount. So let's look at some other ways to use some of our other limbs, starting with the legs. TJ has me mounted, forearm goes across his hip, my other arm is gonna tuck in on the inside. I want my elbow on the inside in case I need to move out against his knee. I do a slight bridge, come up, straighten my bottom leg, fall on my side. Now I have a much greater range of motion with that leg. I can use this elbow to push his knee down, scoop his foot, drag my knee underneath, and I'm guiding it into position with my elbow. Trap, pinch that together, arm goes across, move my hip out, insert my knee on the other side, and then I pull his arm out of position as I come back into the closed guard. Forearm shoots across. I bridge up, fall on my side, scoop his foot, pinch his thigh, arm shoots across to the other side. I want to prevent him from putting any more weight on me. I use my elbow or my hand, but in this case my elbow, to open a little more space so I can insert my knee. Pull his arm out of position as I come back into the closed guard. The foot lift is almost identical to the last escape that we just did. However, his foot isn't going to be flat. The top of his foot is now going to be curved. You'll see what I mean. So maybe he's wearing shoes, maybe he doesn't have his foot flat for whatever reason. Sometimes this is a good option. So I bridge up, turn on my side. Now I'm going to hook underneath. Oh, I can't reach it? Use your elbow to push that down. Scoop underneath the top of his foot. Boom. Trap. Some people like to cross here, come back into a half guard position. That's okay. I feel that personally pinching is enough generally. Move across, insert, just the same as before, come back to close guard.
Side mount escapes. Side mount escapes are critical to progressing and enjoying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I would say that most of the fight that happens, whether in tournament or just in sparring in class, happens in the side mount position. You're either trying to maintain side mount or you're trying to create space and escape side mount position. So I would invest the majority of your energy into ingraining these techniques into your body. Program your body to respond instinctively, to create space, insert that knee, and get out of the side mount position. And then you'll be able to progress to other things like strategy and attacking for submissions. You can't attack for a submission unless you can get up off your back and out of side mount.
TJ's got me in side mount position. Not good for me, but I have a plan. One is to get my hands into posture. So I would recommend against ever trying to lift your opponent and create space on the back of his gi. I see it all the time, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So what we need to do is instead have that forearm underneath the neck, grab the shoulder. Don't grab the gi, grab the shoulder. Now I can leverage my forearm under the neck, start to lift the head, start to create space between his chest and mine. Okay. Other forearm goes against his hip, and now I can bridge. Bridge up, create space. As I'm falling, I maintain that space with my forearm. My knee then inserts all the way across his hips. I push with my shin so my shoulders come back. I pull his arm out of position, drop my foot, one more hip movement, and then I'm back in close guard. Critical that I proceed the hip movement by coming up. Then as I fall, I maintain the space my hips have created. Insert that shin, pull all the way back, wrap the leg, one more hip movement, back to close guard. Number one mistake people make is they get greedy. Right here, they try pulling their leg out. And so, you might be able to do it, but just take one additional hip movement, pull that leg around, and then come back into close guard. It's a good habit to get into. A small hip movement is the answer to a lot of common problems in BJJ.
You can't just have that one escape. You need multiple escapes and be able to chain them or link them together to be successful. So here's another direction that you can go with your side mount escapes.
So we'll start out similarly. I bridge up, and maybe I can't get my knee in, too much resistance, but I am able to crack the door open slightly. So I move his elbow out of the way. This hand that's at his hip comes to the other side. Put my palm on his hip. Take my knees, throw them down. At the same time, I'll throw them to my right as I push. Here, and then we can put him back into open guard. It's very important to use the momentum of your legs to assist you in this technique. So I open the door a little bit, drop my hand, I'm gonna push. I'm not pushing while I'm flat on my back, too much friction. I roll my knees down, and then as I'm in slow motion here on my side, that's when I'm able to complete the revolution and escape. Now let's explore some other directions that we can use for our side mount escapes. So in the last two, we're able to insert our shin. The other one, we redirect our hand. So again, we're gonna change our arm placement. That's how we really mix up side mount escapes. You're boxed in, change your arm positioning. So now we're gonna scoop with that arm that's underneath the neck. We're gonna scoop and reach for an underhook. The underhook is a very powerful position in grappling. And if you tap into it, it'll completely change your side mount escapes as we learn to go to the knees. Small movements to get where we want. Move my hip up, out. I circle my arm underneath. Now I'm gonna switch my hips. I can drop my elbow. Now I can come up to my knees, and we've turned the tables. So I'd like to share a few follow-up techniques once you get to your knees so that you can take advantage of your newfound position. So get that underhook, come up to the knees. Now that I'm here, I can do several things. One is a knee tap. I tap his knee. I'm not going to pull it out from under him. I just block it as I roll forward with my shoulder and drive him to the ground here. And then we can come into Kazuri Kisagatame or scarf hold position. So as I'm doing this, I need to continuously block his knee from coming back in. As I push him through, I push that knee past until I can replace with my knee and make sure that he's not able to regain the guard. So now, rather than pushing him at the knee, I might grab the sleeve or cup behind the tricep here. This is really good for taking our partner down. It's very much like a throw, but we're doing it from below an elevation. So I come here, I pull this in as I drive, two-way motion. Here, take him down, and then switch. So now TJ knows I've done this before. I go for the knee tap, he resists back into me. So I dive my hand underneath the thigh, hold his waist, spin, and then roll him. Note that my hand is tightly hugging his waist. That really helps me pull. Sweeps are a vital part of BJJ in that they enable you to quickly reverse position. Sweeps are not about doing something to your opponent or your partner. Sweeps are more about perfectly conforming your body in the space that you've created or your partner has given you, and then waiting for the right timing to be able to affect your technique. Sweeps. We'll start with the scissor sweep. Scissor sweep was the first sweep that I was actually able to implement against a live, in a live sparring situation. So it's always been critical that I pass this on to my students because it's important for them to be able to taste success as quickly as possible. So we start with the hand positioning. I open his collar up. I insert my hand very deep. I want it along his center line in the back. Then take my other hand, wrap behind the tricep. Now I open my ankles, move my hip out just a little bit, slide my shin all the way across his stomach. My other leg cannot remain here. It needs to drop all the way to the ground. Now I pull him up and then scissor my legs, coming up into the mount position. Hands in position. Open the ankles, move my hip out, fit the shin right across his belt line. Hook very strongly with my foot on the opposite side of his hip. Pull him forward. This is critical. It's not enough to just scissor your legs. You have to off balance him before you can scissor, and then we can come up in a perfect position for a choke. Very closely related to the scissor sweep is the knee sweep or the knee push. So this is a great follow-up to the scissor sweep. We start with the same hand positioning. I'm here, I open my ankles, I move my shin across. Okay, it doesn't go for whatever reason. Now I want to push on this knee, but right now I'm blocking myself. So I pull my shoulders back, boom, move my knee up. Now I'm gonna push his knee out, not straight back, but actually have it trace this arc. You see how it's going in a circle? And then I can switch and come up into the mount position. There's some other methods of doing this sweep. So I can come into position here. Oh, it's not working. My next move can then also be pushing on the shoulder with my knee. I reposition my knee from across the hips to on the shoulder. This is great, not only for going into submissions like the triangle or threatening them, but I have a nice push up here, up top. So when I pull back, I can push that knee out and then be able to slide that knee in for a submission. We can also follow up very smoothly into an arm lock. I do the scissor sweep here, I pull my shoulder back, I bring him out. Now I slide that bottom knee through, turn this up, and we have an arm lock right here. The hip bump is another high percentage sweep. So what's critical in the hip bump is that you're able to open your ankles and move your hips back. Now I can do a full sit up. This is critical because I'm not going to do it with my hands or my legs. It's really driving with the hips. So I start in a closed guard position, open my ankles, sit up as if I'm reaching for his belt, hand slides behind my hips, and then my other hand will come over his tricep. So as I'm lifting, I sweep that arm out of the way. This is a fantastic technique to link together with the kimura. So if I usually like to have my palm on his wrist already. Maybe I'm fighting, maybe I'm inserting my knee here. He forgets that I have my hand on his wrist. So I'm here, I'll sit up for the kimura. He'll pull up, actually, he pulls me up into position. My hand goes back to my hip, raise up with my hips, and then change position. The next sweep is known as the flower sweep, and I find it to be very high percentage. What's critical here is learning how to use your legs to generate momentum.
So what I often like to do is give people a body movement exercise that they can practice at home. It goes something like this.
I'm on my back, and I'm going to start by circling my right leg. I circle it, keep it fairly straight, and then my other leg will come over, and then I'll roll to my stomach. Now I'll roll the opposite way. As soon as I start to roll on my side, my left leg initiates and carries the momentum. So a nice circular motion. Try to make it as smooth as possible. So for the technique itself, I need to get perpendicular to my opponent. It's often good to play this sweep off of the arm lock. So I'll grab the sleeve, put my foot on the hip, move my arm underneath, throw the leg over the face for the arm lock. It's not working. So now I'm gonna swing my leg in a circle, pull him sideways with my knee, and cut underneath with my leg. Note that I still control the hamstring here as I come into the mount position. The most common mistake that people make is they don't cut this bottom leg underneath the partner quickly enough. So they end up bending it, and then the partner ends up landing on the leg, and nobody's happy. So I'm here, I come around, I keep that bent, and then I push him over the leg. So now he's landing on top of it, and maybe I can't complete the sweep, he pushes back into me. Dang, I missed it. So what we want to do is come up, straighten that bottom leg, and then pull more to the side with that knee so we can cut under comfortably. So if a partner gives us a little extra juice, we can redirect that energy, particularly if they stack us. It's a perfect way to enter into this sweep. So I come up, he's stacking me, no good. It's even easier to cut that angle and right into the mount. One fantastic open guard sweep is the hook sweep. It's very simple, but as with most things in life, simple things tend to be very effective. So start with the feet at the hips. I'm gonna cross over, cross grab the sleeve. I'm gonna turn my body, hook behind his heel, and then my right leg will drop behind his knee. So I'm hooking behind the knee. Now I push with my left leg, and then you don't have to pull the heel out. Just need to not let it travel at all. As I push, he pulls me over, knee rides over the thigh, and I come into side mount. Again, cross grab, behind the heel, hook behind his knee, push with the left, and allow him to carry you over, passing the guard.
Chokes. Collar chokes are, I found, to be one of the most difficult and precise submissions in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Difficult because you need really specific hand placement, and if you're a little bit off, it's hard to make it up with muscle. It's hard to use muscle as a lubricant to kind of smooth out the angles with these particular techniques. Also, a good choke is like a trap. You set the trap and maybe you position it just right, and it's not until they take the bait that you put on the choke. So chokes are about precise positioning and timing. Keep that in mind while you're working with your partner.
First choke from the guard, palm up, collar choke. So I open and insert my hand. Very important to open. During live sparring, it's unlikely that you'll get as deep as you need to be with one hand. It's always good to have assistance. So open, insert this hand as deep as possible. You want to keep your arm fairly soft and your wrist curved so you can conform to the contour of his neck. Open, insert. This other hand goes underneath the first hand. Underneath. Now, as my good friend Keith Owen recommended, sometimes if it's not deep enough, you can straighten your arms, get another inch or two, and then now my elbows are on top of each other. Now I can bring my partner into me, open my elbows, and then roll my wrists. So open, insert, elbows on top of each other, open the elbows out, and then roll the wrists up. Choke number 2, palm up, palm down choke. So we start the same, open, insert my hand as deep as possible. Now I uncross my ankles, move over to the side. I want my forearm on his jawbone here. I flick my wrist up, grab the material on top of his shoulder, and then come back into center. I roll my right wrist up and get the tap. So what I'm essentially doing is blocking him from moving his head and creating any more space. Open, insert, get my angle. Don't grab and then put the forearm on the face. Put the forearm on the face and then grab. Come back into center, pull him into you, and roll your wrist. As I come back to center, it's really about rolling this wrist up into his carotid artery. The next choke we're going to do is known as a sleeve choke, and my first instructor, Claudio Franza, was a master of this choke, and he has won several competitions with the opponent unconscious, because this is one of those chokes where you feel yourself get into, you think you can make it, and the next thing, the ref is resuscitating you. So we're going to take a slightly looser grip. We don't want a really, really deep grip on this one. A slightly looser grip on the collar. I'm going to pull him into me, push his head as if it's going into a basket. Then I lock into position by rolling my fingers up. Okay. Now I can continue to lean back and adjust my angle, twisting the entire way. I'm here, loose grip, duck that head. If we have a very, very tight grip, I'm not able to lock the position because I need to get that hand through the hole and past my elbow. So here, through, and then continue to lean to the side. The triangle choke is one of my favorite techniques, and equally important to the mechanics of performing the choke properly are the setups. As with any submission, the setup is equally important to the actual submission itself. So in this case, we're going to use a little bit of push and pull. So if I try to just push my arm into TJ, he's going to resist that. So what I want to do is instead pull, he pulls back, and then I use that to push his wrist back into his chest. So I'm here, I do a little push-pull, I'm pulling, he pulls back, I push that into his chest, foot on the hip, I'm going to bring my leg over the shoulder. I beat his elbow, I beat his hand. Now, my shin is going perpendicular to his neck. I'm able to cross my legs. I want my knee over my ankle here, pass the arm over, squeeze my knees together, pull down on his head, and lift with my hips. So we do a little bit of push-pull. I pull, he pulls back, bam. Very important to put the foot on the hip. Now I can elevate my hips and swivel if I need to because I'm driving off of his hip. Now I cross my legs. Be sure to lock it behind the knee. If we're just like this, he will be able to break it. So sometimes you have to grab your shin, kick into position, lock it up. Now, pass that arm over, pull down on the head, lift with the hips. One of the classic setups for the triangle is arm lock, triangle, arm lock. So what we want to do is attack for the arm. He's going to resist by pulling his arm out, and that sets us up perfectly for the triangle, and we'll have a chance to analyze some of the mechanics a little more in depth. So hold on to his sleeve here, put the foot on the hip, dive my arm underneath his hamstring. I pull myself into position, go for the arm lock. He pulls out. Immediately my hand goes to the tricep here. I throw my leg to the other side of his head. Now I use the inside of my thighs to transition to where I'm square again. But I need to go even further. I need to get perpendicular to my opponent. So I grab my shin, find that hip again, continue my rotation. Now I hold this, kick up, lock behind the knee, turn my knee in. Now there's a little bit of space here because his arm is on this side of my body. Ideally, it should be on the other side. So I lift, pull that arm over, and now I'm in a very tight position. So again, squeeze the knees together, lift my hip, pull down on the head. We're tightening the noose from all angles. So here. Going for the arm lock. He pulls out immediately, hand to the tricep, knee on the other side. I use the inside of my thighs to pivot. Grab my shin. It's not going to be enough. It's very common for guys to try to get the triangle from here, but note that the back of my calf is running over his back. We need it to cut 90 degrees to his neck. So if I need to, if I have it here, I can raise my hips past that arm over, then readjust. Grab my shin, continually adjusting that angle. Cross, lock behind the knee, and then we're here. There is a trinity of sorts. If you don't quite have the triangle, but you have this leg positioning, what you need to do is always adjust the arm, the head, and your hips. So up, over, grab your shin, adjust, here, pull on the head. No, that's not quite right. Grab your shin again, adjust yourself, here, pull on the head. Yes. So incrementally, we can end up in the triangle. So an example of that would be as follows. Here, I come around. Oh, this is it. I lift my hips. I pass this over. I'm pulling on the head. He's going to be trying to posture up. I pull on the head. Now I can grab my shin. Boom. Slide this out, lift up, lock behind, knees together, and then lift. The arm lock and the triangle are closely related, both from the guard position and the mount position. So I like to often treat this combination as an arm lock, triangle, arm lock, and not just simply an arm lock, triangle. You'll see what I mean. I come into position, boom, he pulls that out, I'm coming around, and now he stands up. This is a perfect time to hook under his heel, use that to pivot as I come into position here, throwing the leg over the face.
Chokes from the mount. Very similar to chokes from the guard, except that gravity is acting in the opposite direction. So sometimes it's difficult since gravity is pushing his neck against his gi. It's hard to be able to get that hand as deep as we need to. So you can start here. Sometimes you have to pull up and then zip this up until you get a nice deep grip. Okay. So I'm here, bam, I zip it up. Now, first choke is palm up choke. I insert this hand underneath, get as deep as possible. Now, elbows on top of each other. I lower myself down, hooking with my heels, balancing on my head, opening my elbows, and then rolling my wrists. So again, I'm here, this goes underneath, I balance on my head, open my elbows, and then roll my wrists up. It's really about rolling those wrists once your hands are in position. Very common for people to do this shallow. Look how far my elbows are opening. Yeah, and you have nothing at all. So deep, elbow on top of each other, and then it's much easier. You can even get it from here if you have it just right. If I'm not able to get it, sometimes I can raise my hips up for additional power. So I go into the position, I'm not able to get it, and so I raise my hips up for additional driving force. Choke number 2. So get that hand in very deep. We're doing the shave choke variation of the palm up, palm down choke. So instead of just reaching for the material here, I'm gonna end up shallow. And often he tucks his chin, so I'm not even able to get a really good angle. So we need to manipulate the space a little bit. I'm gonna take my elbow, drop it right by his ear, and then as gently as possible, I start to shave across his jawline with my elbow, turning it. Now I can get very deep here, okay. Then, on the side where my arm is over, I whisper in his ear, be sure to hug, and drive those hips forward. So, nice deep grip, drop the elbow, bring it over, roll that wrist in, and then go right into the choke. One additional variation involves inserting your thumb on the same side as your original hand. So here I'm gonna have my thumb and maybe I just hang out. Then I drop my elbow on the ground, have my thumb slide. Now I'm in a very good position. I'm totally gripping his lapel and I can come into the position easily. I have a very deep grip. So again, here, thumb, drop that elbow, move it around, let it slide. And then we have our choke. The fist choke. Not considered to be the most pleasant choke, however, is very effective. And I use it not to submit people, but generally to distract them, to get their arms to come up, to protect their neck. It goes as follows. I circle underneath TJ's neck. I reinforce by grabbing my own gi here. Then I make a fist. I don't want anything protruding. I want this to be as flat as possible. I grip his lapel and then put my flat fist against his carotid artery. Now I'll drive with my fist and then roll my shoulder on the opposite side. It's really about rolling that shoulder to cinch it all up. So again, I'm here. I'll lift, circle this underneath, catch the inside of my gi cuff, grip very flat. We want it to be as flat as possible on the carotid. Press in and then roll with my shoulder on the other side.
Triangle from the mount is another very cool choke that we can do, but it's difficult to get over this arm. So what I need is to not force him to move his arm, but bait him into moving his arm. So as soon as he goes for an elbow knee escape, my knee hops over and I need to come on top of his shoulder. Now I lean my weight over to the left, pull up on his head, swivel my leg around. I cup his tricep, pull. Now I can lean over on my elbow here so I can tighten up the triangle. Okay. Here, we almost have it, but it's not quite a complete submission until I pull up on the head. Very critical to pull up on the head and then squeeze your knees together. So as soon as he starts to move on his side, I beat that elbow. Pull up on his head, all my weight's on my left leg. Swivel, pull that elbow forward, lock up. Here, I can pull up on the head, and then if I need to, I can hug his wrist, transfer my weight to my hand, and then throw the leg over the face for the final arm lock. Another good choke from the mount is the head and arm choke. Now it's possible to finish it from the mount, but instead we're going to finish it from side mount and just begin the position in the mount. So TJ, I'm very close. He's inserting his arm to create space. I push this past. I lock it in with my own neck here. Now I can clasp my hands together or not. If I'm pushing hard enough with my neck, we don't need to. Then I dismount, come off to the side, immediately start to angle. Arm triangle to my own head, head comes down. I shrug my shoulders. We can get the tap there. If he's extremely large, like a bodybuilder, sometimes I'm not able to connect my hands. I can come to a kesa position. I can then squeeze, pulling here, driving with my foot to get the tap. Also, I can hook my own hamstring, grab my ankle, and then lean in. Arm locks. Arm locks are one of my favorite techniques. At first I found them very difficult to do, but that's mainly because my timing wasn't so good, my hip positioning wasn't good, my mechanics weren't good, and my awareness was low. But other than that, everything else was great. So the most important thing, I would say, is getting the right angle, getting perpendicular to your opponent. So a great way to practice the arm lock is simply grabbing on top of the sleeve, that same side. I'm going to put my heel on his hip. Now I can push myself, but I'm not quite perpendicular. So I like to dive my hand underneath the hamstring. So as my heel pushes me part of the way, my hand can pull me the rest of the way. Lock behind the armpit with one leg, the other one goes over the neck. Now I need to lock down very tight here, and I can roll out to my elbow, trap the wrist, and raise my hips for the tap. Foot on hip, hand dives underneath, simultaneous motion. I'm turning, lock, and then lock this one down. I don't want to cross my ankles at this point. Let's have independent leg action, and then I can come up, raise my hips, and get the tap. bent arm lock from the guard, or the kimura. So this is a high percentage technique. Once you tap into seeing it, you'll see it everywhere. You can get it from all kinds of positions, and it works at both the white belt and the black belt level. So, most important thing, palm on his wrist. 2, uncross my ankles. I have to be able to move my hips back so I can sit up effectively. Wrap my own wrist. Some people advocate using their thumb. I use the monkey grip, the thumbless grip, for almost everything. It's a personal preference. Drop my elbow. Use my body weight to off balance, and then I drive my hip once, twice, pull in with my heel as I rotate my body. Palm on the wrist, uncross my ankles, move my hips back, sit up, wrap my wrist, drop my elbow. Shoulder on the mat, I move away once, almost, twice is just right. Pull in with my heel and then rotate. I don't want to do it with my arms. I want to pull that elbow into my chest and then rotate my upper body as one unit. The telephone arm lock is a perfect follow-up for the kimura. So it's very common for them to, once they feel that pressure mounting, they can't have their arm bent any longer and they straighten it, which feeds right into our plan. Uncross my ankles. I sit up. I'm breaking him down here. He straightens his arm. I allow that to happen. I catch it in between my shoulder and my neck. Move my hip out, foot on the hip, knee on his shoulder, and then I reinforce my elbow as I do a side crunch. Do not resist his resistance. Allow it to happen. Just guide it into position, move my hip out, foot on the hip, knee on the shoulder, and then crunch. Whatever resistance they put up, flow with it. Here's an example. I go into the kimura. He doesn't like it. He straightens his arm. Telephone arm lock. I'm trying. He slips that out. I catch it in my other arm, and now I just go for the straight arm lock by throwing my knee over the shoulder. TJ pushes up. I roll my hand down. My thumb goes inside of his armpit. On the other arm, my thumb is going to point up. Now I'm able to transfer my weight into my hands. So from here, I can jump to my feet. Next stage is I transfer and then I turn slightly. So I transfer my weight, but then also turn. Again, we're going for that perpendicular angle. Final stage is I transfer the weight, I turn, and then sit right back into the arm lock. TJ pushes up, arm goes over, arm goes under. The overarm, that's the arm that I'm going to be taking. Now, it's possible you could do it this way. I find this to be a little bit more female-friendly, a little bit easier on your opponent if you're going to do high repetitions, and I can also learn how to transfer my weight to just one hand. Say if TJ were to bridge in that direction, I can transfer my weight to the hand and then come into the arm lock. So as he pushes up, transfer the weight, swing into position, and take the straight arm lock. We can also do this arm lock in a segmented fashion. So as TJ pushes up, I go into my position. Now I just slide my knee up. I'm blocking him from bringing his elbow back. I flip my leg, bring this in tight. My elbow comes and wraps his wrist. I transfer my weight not only to my thigh, but to my hand on the opposite side of his body. Now I can really easily bring that leg around his face and then sit into the arm lock. TJ pushes up, I slide that knee forward, flip my leg. Trust the weight on that thigh as I wrap his wrist, bring the leg around his head, and then come into position. Very important to have good mechanics as you do your arm lock. So as TJ pushes up, I come up into position, I flip, everything is tight, everything is tight. This is tight, there's no space. Offensively, I want to always eliminate space. Wrap his wrist, I counterbalance my hips with my head so that I'm tight as I loop that leg around. Now, I can't have my knees opening, I can't have my heels not pulling. I need to pull my heels to my butt, knees together, wrap that wrist, and then take the arm lock. The spinning arm lock for mount is a great sensitivity exercise. So rather than waiting for somebody to hold their arms up and you to swivel into position, I put my chest low. As soon as I feel him lifting, that's when I go into the position. So as soon as he pushes up, that's when I respond. And then from here, I scissor my legs, come back into the position, and we can repeat. TJ has his arms in position. I take my palm, put it on top of his wrist. Other palm goes on top of the elbow. I can use my arm strength here, but I prefer to use my body weight to drive his wrist back into his shoulder. And then as soon as I can, I place my elbow next to his neck and ear. It's very important. I slide my arm underneath his elbow, grab my own wrist. Now I slide my left leg back so I'm not blocking myself. Bring his elbow down to his hip, but note that the back of his hand is still on the mat. Then I lift up. The range of motion increases as his elbow is higher on his body. So here, big range of motion. As I pull it down toward his hip, it gets smaller and smaller. Your opponent will definitely try to resist that technique. One way that he can get safe again and negate your technique is to bring his elbow back into a center line. Note that as you get further and further away from your center line, you get weaker. So he tries to bring that elbow back into his center. That's a perfect opportunity to transition to a straight arm lock. I'm pushing down, I'm going into the technique, and then TJ pulls that in. That is when I pivot. Again, going perpendicular to my opponent. Push down, I wrap up, he pulls. As soon as he does, I put my heel in his armpit and then pivot on my knee. Now I lean forward, putting my weight in my right leg, and then coming out into the straight arm. The minute he pulls in, I have to be able to capitalize on that momentum that he generates. So here is the real motion. As he pulls in, I pivot on my heel and also my rear knee. I don't need to slide my knee up to his head in this particular instance. As he pulls up, I'm here, then I really weight my right leg and also roll this down for a little bit more stability. As the leg swings over, and then I can come back to a straight arm.
The other common form of resistance is for him to reinforce his own arm, and that works out even better for us. So let's take a look. I'm pushing down. He doesn't like that one bit. He reinforces his own forearm. Then I pivot into position, hook underneath his arm, continue to weight my left palm, pinning his hand in position as my leg swings over, and then I can extend into the arm lock. If I'm here, I need to keep that weighted. Dive underneath, I can grab my own lapel if I need to. Hips forward, head forward, and then extend into the tight arm lock. Leg locks. Leg locks are a fairly new part of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. Back in the old days, people would consider it to be a little bit cheap for you to win a match by a leg lock because it doesn't, they feel, demonstrate the same skill that's required to pass the guard and affect an upper body submission or a choke. And there is a little bit of truth to that because passing the guard is a very complex skill and it takes a while to learn. Whereas if you get good at a leg lock, you might be able to submit somebody of a much higher rank by catching them by surprise, or if they're not well versed in leg locks. Mr. Harris, my instructor, won, I think, about 14 of his 21 competition matches by straight footlock. He learned his leg locks under a Sambo master named Nikolai Paturin, and I'm very fortunate to be the recipient of a lot of that leg lock knowledge, so I'm happy to share it with you. We start with the entry for the leg lock, and this is kind of a universal one-size-fits-all leg lock entry that I teach to my students and I found to be very effective in learning good footwork for the entry. So what I need to do is use both my hands. I pick one heel off and then I press the other knee away from me. I step across with my right foot, put it underneath his cheek, and I lean forward. Now my left hand comes off the heel, grabs the knee, and I pull in as I sit back, keeping everything nice and tight. Again, I need to pick this heel off of me. If I try pushing this away, he's still connected to my hip. That's no good. So I need to get this just past, step in across, hold the knee, and if I'm having a little bit of fear about falling backwards, I can hold onto his belt to slow my descent as my heel comes over and blocks his hip. Pick the heel, push the knee away, step across, hold that knee, and then sit back. So you may be asking yourself, why do I step across? Why am I putting that foot underneath his cheek? When you do that, it enables you to roll very easily. And you never want to finish a leg lock facing up. You always want to be on your side. For example, I'll push the knee, I'll step diagonally. As I fall into position, all I have to do is roll over to my side here. And now we have the heel hook. So I bring my arm back, use my wrist to poke up that heel, clasp my hands together, pull the heel up to my chin, and then I rotate my body. So because I'm stepping across, I'm able to roll very easily to the side.
heel hook is a technique that you should be aware of, yet I don't feel it's appropriate for white belts to be putting it on people and trying to submit them with it. It's important to be aware of it and even practice the entry and practice the technique. However, in randori or sparring, I would skip it for the time being. One more time. Push away, step across, hug that knee, and now you can see, because this leg is underneath, it's easy to roll to this side, bring the hand back, turn that heel up, thumb over thumb, bring it to my chin, and then I can rotate my body. Now let's take a look at the straight footlock. So I push the knee away, step underneath, sit down, very tight, not a lot of space. Now from here, I need to get my arm underneath his leg. And generally, I need to go as low as possible. So I'll hook the leg, move my hip back, then bring my wrist in front of me. I need to grab my wrist, pull all the way in, all the way up, all the way back, employing my lat, and now I can sit back and take the straight foot lock. So again, pull my wrist all the way in, all the way up like a guillotine, all the way back, bring my lat into it, and then raise my hips. Of course, you have this entire range of motion to affect the technique, but if your mechanics are good, you'll get it beforehand. That really isn't the best way to enter into the straight foot lock, however. Teaching people how to affect the lock with their back on the ground is good, but it's more for educational purposes, so that people can understand what the mechanics are very clearly. However, you always want to finish that on your side. Okay? So here we're starting with a square stance and then inserting our leg. Very often in competition, somebody will have their leg already in. From here, I'm going to take my right hand, cup his knee, and then dive my hand underneath. Okay. So right hand to the knee, left hand underneath, very low on the ankle, and sometimes you grab your own lapel here. Then I'll swing my leg forward, foot drops over the hip, I roll on my side, and then I can affect it. We can start from a square stance like this. And I can go into pushing that knee, then the hand goes immediately to the knee. Roll over on the side. If I need to, I can grab my lapel, tighten up a little bit more, and then roll. Of course, we have all this additional room to affect the foot lock if we need to, and our mechanics aren't perfect. The toe press is one of my favorite techniques, and we get into it with that original one-size-fits-all leg lock entry. So push, pick, step across with the foot, drop down, hug that knee. Now I'm exerting a little bit of pressure here with the back of my elbow. So I keep that pressure on, I sit up, and then replace with my hand. So as I sit up, my hand drops from the knee slides all the way down to the top of the foot. I want to grab very low, near his toes. Thumb around, fingers around. Lock my arm into position at 90 degrees. Roll over on my side. Now I lift my hip and get the toe press, very similar to the straight foot lock. The knee bar. Great submission, very dangerous if you don't have a lot of control, so I generally recommend that once you're a blue belt you start experimenting with it. However, you can always train and drill the technique, and it is a required submission for my blue belt requirements. So again, I want to push that knee away, and instead of picking the heel, now I'm going to scoop it with the inside of my elbow. Push this down, rely on my hand, transfer my weight to my hand so I'm supporting myself on my hand and my foot. Now I'm able to rotate into position and affect the submission. A slightly stronger variation is bringing your leg completely around to the other side. So I pick that heel, I rely on my hand, but then I bring this leg all the way around. Now this is much stronger because I can cross my ankles, really squeeze those knees together, and then go for the submission.
Passing the guard. Passing the guard is a complex skill. There are several steps in the process of passing the guard which make it a little bit more difficult than some other aspects of jiu-jitsu. First, you have to get good base and posture. Second, you need to open the ankles. Third, you need to pass over the leg or under the leg. And then fourth, you need to reestablish your posture by getting your hooks or your arms around your opponent so they can't replace guard very easily. Passing the guard is a skill that some people neglect because it's difficult. And so they try to substitute methods of passing the guard. So instead of passing the guard, they'll just drop back for a footlock. Man, I don't need to learn how to pass the guard. I know how to tap people. That can work, but it's short-sighted. So I would advise against doing that for the time being. Some people like to pick up their opponent and slam them on the mat and somehow jolt them into opening their ankles. Again, I disagree with this method of passing the guard. All you have to do is learn how to use your power to control their hips so that you can create space. Think of two centers that are joined. In the guard, they are together in closed guard. What you need to do is create leverage so that you can pop those two centers away from each other, and then one can move around the other. When it's like this, when the two centers are joined, it can be difficult at first. But pay attention to the techniques I'm going to show you, and I think you'll be well on your way. I'm in TJ's guard, and the first thing I need to do is get good base and posture. So the base comes from spreading my legs wide. The posture comes in time. So I'll start in a good low posture. This helps prevent against chokes, and I'm occupying his arms. If he happens to get one arm in my collar, I keep my other arm on his bicep here to prevent him from utilizing that. Head down. Now I work my way up. Some people advocate grabbing the lapels, keeping them together so I can press against his upper body if he tries to stand up, and then they put a hand on the belt. Others, hand on the belt, look up as you press into position. It doesn't really matter, you'll mix and match as time goes on. So now that I'm in good posture, I'm able to utilize my frame. So if TJ were to pull on my collar here, I can redirect the force back into him. So as he pulls, I can use my frame and my skeletal structure. Now, if he's pulling me down and my posture is broken, then I have to use muscle to come back into position. So I always want to maintain this upright posture like this, and ideally I'm not even looking at my opponent. Okay, so we're down low. We come up into position, I look up, I'm driving with the heels of my hands into his hips, I'm locking them in place. I move my knee into his tailbone. I'm separating our centers. I move my leg back, I keep my hips square until the very last moment. I can feel the tension on his ankles, and then I twist them at the last minute, opening his ankles. My hand goes to his knee, I push down, drop my hand on the other side of his hip, and then just hop over, passing the guard. The under the leg guard pass is a little bit more difficult because there are more steps involved. However, there are certain advantages and disadvantages to doing the under the leg pass. Advantage number one, you are able to tire out your opponent if you can keep their hips above their head and make them carry their own weight. So you have gravity on your side. In these smashing passes, you can utilize that to your advantage, even if you're a smaller individual going against a larger person. On the other hand, you are more susceptible to arm locks and triangles. Because you're going underneath the leg, you are kind of in a danger zone. Experienced players don't worry about that, but you should know that as you start the journey, there is a susceptibility to arm locks and triangles by passing underneath the legs. We'll open the ankles same way as we did before. Isolating his hips, pinning him down, knee in the tailbone, work that leg back, square hips, square, and then I twist him at the last minute. I push down on his knee, and then I'm going to do a small shimmy, just a couple inches, to increase the pressure on his inner leg. So I started here, I move my hip over just slightly. Now it's much easier to use my elbow to pop this up to my shoulder. I want to insert my thumb into his collar, then I drive forward. I want his knee to come up and have his hips raise off of the ground. Then I throw my chest forward and establish my posture. Here are a few things you should avoid. As I come into position, I don't want to leave my elbow out. As I push down here, if he's able to beat this hand, boom, I'm in a triangle. So it's important to always tuck that elbow in. I come into position, boom, drop that elbow on the inside. I push down. You can also turn the hand over this way. This is slightly stronger. I personally do not use it, but it is an option. Second thing you'd like to avoid. You don't want to reach with your hand underneath here. My bicep will never beat his hamstring. His leg is much, much stronger. So always use your elbow to pop this up onto your shoulder. Now I can use my body weight. Thumb goes inside, I'm driving forward, hips up. The last thing is I don't want to use his hand to push his leg off. It's difficult here to get this unless I throw my chest forward and my head back. That way I don't have to obligate my hands. I can take care of it without them. In jiu-jitsu, we have to use other parts of our body, like our hands. So when he puts up a wall of resistance, in this case, he's going to block my hip with his hand to prevent the guard pass. I need to learn how to use another part of my body to clear that obstruction. You'll see what I mean. So as TJ blocks me here, I want to use my knee. The first option is moving my knee on the inside and then clearing, and I end up in a very dominant position. Option number two is going to be going over his arm with my knee. It's a little bit more difficult, but here's how we do it. I come underneath. I could use my knee that way,
instead I want to go over. Not quite enough room here, so I have to move my feet, then I can clear this out and continue to pass the guard. The easiest way, however, is just wiggling your hip and changing the plane that they're able to resist you at. So if we're here, I want to bend the wrist back at an unfavorable angle. Just watch.